Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Donald Trump is on a roll. The guy just gets it. Democrats are stuck doing the same old, the same old establishment tricks. They've got an old, crusty octogenarian who obviously doesn't have the ability to adapt. They're doing the same thing, expecting different results. But the same simply cannot be said for Donald Trump. And it's funny because people try to compare Donald Trump and Joe Biden's age. Well, they're essentially the same age. It's the same thing. There should be equal concerns for their old age, mental acuity, and physical health. That's the argument that's often made by leftists. But obviously, the number of their age itself doesn't tell the whole story now, does it? Joe Biden's an old fossil who obviously can't keep up, and Donald Trump, I think we can all agree, is very much young in spirit, and he proves it time and time again with his ability to adapt. Joe Biden's the old man who doesn't know how the internet works, and Donald Trump's the young man trapped in an old man's body who just gets it. And the most important thing is that he's malleable. Not only does Donald Trump get it, but he has the ability to adapt. He has the ability to keep up with the times, and he continues to prove it to everybody as he starts to implement a new campaign strategy here. Funnily enough, exactly what we've been calling for. Donald Trump makes a visit to Tim Pool's podcast. This could be the start of something very, very big. Let me show you guys exactly what happened, why it's important. Let's have a conversation. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so this is what I've been calling for. Although I've been pushing more for Joe Rogan's podcast than anything else, because obviously Tim Pool's podcast is a little bit more partisan. Most people watching it are already kind of within the Trump world, but still I've been saying forever this is one of the most important things that Donald Trump could be doing. I've said this forever. He needs to pull away from the Fox News world, from doing interviews with all the same old conservative commentators, the same radio and TV guys. He needs to venture into the world of podcasts. He needs to sit down for 2 hours with somebody and have an honest conversation, because this is where Donald Trump looks his best, in moments like these.
And we have to give honor and respect back, and I believe immunity, because, so often when a police person does their job, they end up with no pension, they end up with no house, they end up with no family. Everything's taken away from them. They have to get their own lawyer. So we're going to give them back their dignity and their strength.
I got one big question for you. So part of my family comes from Korea.
Good.
And you did what I think is one of the most tremendous things. You crossed the demilitarized zone into North Korea with no security as a sign of goodwill and peace with the hostile nation. And I've had people tell me it never happened. So I think people need to know about it. And I'm wondering if you can just tell me, how did that happen? How did it come to be?
And it hasn't happened since.
Yeah.
And when I met with, with the handoff, you sort of meet with the previous president for a period of time. The meeting lasted for quite a while. With President Obama, you sit in the Oval Office and you talk, and the press is outside, and you talk for a little while. He said the single greatest threat we have is North Korea. And I said, have you called them? Have you tried to talk to them? Little things like that. And didn't matter what the answer was. He felt that was the single biggest threat in the world was North Korea. And as you know, there was certain hostility when I first started, and all of a sudden it boiled down to something that was very beautiful, the way it happened. And I got along with him very well. And I will say that if Hillary won that race, you would have had a nuclear war and millions of people would have been killed. And you weren't even close to that. It never happened. It was never going to happen. I got along great with him, and it just never was going to happen.
Were you at all scared in any way when you crossed into an enemy country?
Well, I wouldn't say that Secret Service was thrilled. And in those blue buildings, there were lots of people in those buildings that I looked at. The two blue buildings on each side with the windows. And I looked in those windows, and there were a lot of things happening in those. Someday I'll tell you about it. But no, I felt very safe. I felt my relationship with him, as you know, was very hostile. Little Rocket Man and all that. But then all of a sudden it morphed. He respected me. I respected him. And we ended up, once we got to know each other, we ended up very good. A very smart guy, very strong guy. He's the absolute leader of that country. For those that think he's not, they're wrong. And I got to know him very well. I even did a press conference. He never did a press conference before. I said, would you like to do a press conference? And we did a press conference, if you remember. And then he said, that's the end of the press conference. And boom, everybody was pretty radically thrown out. But it was a press conference, the only press conference he's ever done. I got along with him great. We had no nuclear war.
More big one. Will you pardon Julian Assange?
Well, I'm going to talk about that today, and we're going to give it very serious consideration. And we're going to have a couple of other things to say in the speech that I think you're going to love.
I've heard some rumors.
And you've gotten so much out of me, I should leave a little bit for the speech, don't you think?
You announced you're taking cryptocurrency.
What we're doing is we're backing it as a field, and we have to, because otherwise somebody else is going to be doing it from another country. And as you know, they're already trying, and it's going to happen, and we're going to help it happen. And it's something that can be very good. I think it can be very good.
No central bank digital currencies.
No central bank.
I didn't vote for you in 2016. I was jaded. Obama let me down. I'm from Chicago. I thought 2016 was silly. And then in 2020, with the timeline for getting out of Afghanistan,
right,
when you tried to get our troops out of Syria, my question is, why are we in Syria? Who even knew?
Yeah.
And they lied to you, and they lied to us about the number of troops in there. And so maybe it's a bit blunt for me to say I want to see people prosecuted for the lies of the American people. But in terms of foreign policy, perhaps it's a little bit of a biased interview, but I think you're the greatest president of my lifetime.
You know, instead of having a short segment with a dishonest mainstream media journalist who's unwilling to go to certain places, just sit down with regular people and have a regular conversation. You know, at the end of the day, Donald Trump's not a politician. So why take the politician route? He's doing something never seen before and something amazing. Not only is he venturing into enemy territory, doing rallies in Democrat cities and showing up at the Libertarian National Convention, but he's also sitting with people in the independent media sphere. And the best part is that it's a learned behavior. Again, it comes back to one of Donald Trump's biggest strengths. He's malleable. He's willing to mold his strategy. He's willing to look around and learn and figure out what's working and pivot. He doesn't just get caught up in, the same old, in whatever was thought to work in the past. No, he has the ability to learn, and I think Vivek Ramaswamy probably had a big impact here. Vivek went from somebody who was completely unknown, a guy who throughout his professional life was totally apolitical and didn't even vote as he admitted himself, to one of the top names in conservative politics. He went from no-name recognition to actually showing up in the polls in the Republican primary process. That's unheard of. That's amazing. And the question is, how did he do it? Did the media prop him up like Obama? Not at all. He did it himself totally organically, without spending billions of dollars, without the media shilling him or bringing him on their shows or mentioning his name. For Pete's sakes, most of the mainstream sources pretended as if he didn't exist. But what did he do? Well, he used the internet. He understands the landscape, the independent media landscape. He showed up everywhere. Even at one point, one of his team members, I'll be honest with you guys, even messaged me, sent me an email asking whether I'd be willing to have him on the show. Personally, I didn't think I was the right person to do it. I don't really have much experience in interviews or podcasts, so I decided to stay out of it. But, they were reaching out to every YouTube channel. I mean, you guys probably noticed it. He was on a different podcast nearly every single day. And with that strategy, he went from insignificant, irrelevant, unknown, to again, one of the biggest voices in the space. And obviously, I think the Trump camp realized that. They realize how much of a good strategy it is, and most importantly, how much of a good grassroots strategy that is, and I think now they're starting to implement it. Donald Trump has some amazing moments with Tim Pool, an unfiltered, unedited conversation, and I'd say it's been a smashing success. It's been perceived really well. It comes back to the same concept I've mentioned many times before. I think one of the most powerful tools in Donald Trump's arsenal is humanizing himself, normalizing himself. The media goes on and on about how dangerous he is, how crazy and unhinged he is. Well, how do you counteract that? I don't think going to war with the media is the right approach. I don't think getting into petty fights with these media hacks is even worth it. Let them talk. Let them frickin' squawk. Blah, blah, blah. Donald Trump is Hitler. Donald Trump is Hitler. Non-stop. Let them say it. Who gives a crap? Let it happen. Let them go on and just go about your own business as if that noise doesn't even exist, and just have honest conversations with people. Just show up. Authentically show yourself for who you are, and the contrast will be enough. People will have exposure, of course, to what the media is saying. They'll see it all. And then, of course, they'll see Trump interacting with people normally, acting like a normal human being, which he is. And they'll be able to make the determination themselves. The contrast will be clear. The media will be squawking, and the reality will be right before your very eyes. He's not what they say he is. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If Donald Trump goes on Joe Rogan and it ends up being 2 or 3 hours of good conversation where Donald Trump is perceived well, the election is over. It's freaking game over. Well, Tim Pool's podcast may not be Joe Rogan's, but it's certainly a significant platform, and the clips are bouncing all over Twitter. The strategy might already be in effect. It might already be enough. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg, just the start. I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump starts showing up everywhere, having honest conversations. And if that happens while Joe Biden's in the basement, unable to do the same, unable to keep up, this thing is wrapped up. It's done and dusted. It's going to be a very, very bad election night for all the Democrat shills. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.